as our kids were growing up, we did a lot of camping. We camped in Florida. We actually camped some in the Smoky Mountains. And we did a few walks, but never some real big hikes. And I had been looking forward for a long time to going up and doing some hiking with David in the mountains. So 2013 turned out to be the year that we decided we would make it happen. Well, my dad's put a bunch of hiking and camping gear in these two trunks, so I'm going to go through it and see what we might use, you know, for our hiking trip. Some pans for cooking. I have my own sleeping bag over there, and you've got yours. And what's this? Space blanket. Look what we got here. Stainless steel cookware. Look at this, you got this kind of pan. It's got its own handles built in, and they're round so they fold in. I stole this from the other cook set. This will go on any of these, and you set the handle aside so it doesn't get hot while you're cooking. But we're not gonna take this because it's too heavy. In this particular case, we're gonna take a bunch of candy bars. I ain't gonna take this. It's always good to have some cord. All right, now to the next trunk, the guide to the Appalachian Trail in Tennessee and North Carolina. Looks like it's got some maps that fold out. Ooh, there you go. Spare, special, and extra clothing. Teresa's boots, wool socks. That almost looks like my dad. Oh, look, a checklist. Lunch bag, trail snacks, emergency pack, maps. Maps and more maps.
The lid off, and the little cup, and then here's your drugs, some antihistamines and anti-inflammatory.
The little one's 24 pounds and the big one's 25 pounds. Well, the Appalachian Trail can look quite different in different places. One of the things that determines what the trail looks like is how many people walk on it. Sometimes when it's raining, you'll feel like you're walking in a stream because the water will be running down the trail. So when you're walking an Appalachian Trail or walking the Boulevard Trail, distances in the mountains somehow are much longer than distances on flat land. And so it takes a lot longer to hike a mile in the mountains than it does on flatlands. Occasionally you'll see a nice sight, but most of the time you're walking in the woods.
So we started off from Newfound Gap. We said goodbye to Suzanne and Mom, and we began the hike towards the Icewater Springs shelter on the Appalachian Trail. It was kind of a foggy day, and then it started to rain about halfway up the trail. Thankfully, my mother had packed ponchos for both of us to wear.
We put the ponchos on, it covered us, covered our packs, and that really came in handy.
Our shoes and socks were getting soaked, and as you looked out, you could see the fog creeping through the trees. As we were walking, we started to get kind of hungry, so what better to eat on the trail than trail mix? And of course, the most important thing to remember for any long-distance journey, drinking plenty of water.
This gave us a nice hike from Newfound Gap on the Appalachian Trail up to the Ice Water Springs shelter. We got to the shelter. This shelter was made of stone with some wooden timbers and a metal roof on the top. And each shelf was supposed to be for like 6 people, so there was 12 people could stay in the shelter. When David and I got there, all the places were taken except for 2, so we were up on the top shelf.
There was a fireplace on one side of the shelter, and in the meantime, we had opened up our bags and ate some chicken for dinner and some carrots. In this part of the Smoky Mountains, black bears are everywhere, so we had to put our food where it would be safe, up in the trees. By using the cable system, we were able to hoist up one of the packs that had all the food. It's a pretty cool system.
Should we get this down here?
It's a good thing because we could have put the whole camp in danger if we forgot to take away the food.
There we go. There's our pack up in the air, away from the bears.
That's where all our food is. When it was time for bed, we came to realize a hard truth.
Those boards were kind of hard, and it turned out we didn't have any air mattresses. So David and I kind of tossed and turned and tried to get comfortable for most of the night rather than sleeping most of the night. We got up in the morning, got a nice breakfast. Our breakfast was granola.
All right, ooh, looks good.
We had carrots, we had trail mix, we had all kinds of stuff to eat.
Just a short walk down from the shelter was our water source. It wasn't for drinking though. If you wanted to drink it, you would have to boil it. Here is the bathroom, and we found something very interesting inside.
Yes, they're very considerate. Come right on in, make yourself at home. If you're in a wheelchair, we have the wheelchair accessible handicap rails.
Wait, I don't think anybody makes a hike in a wheelchair. Could you imagine someone going up this in a wheelchair?
So we started out from Ice Water Springs Shelter, backtracked about 1/10 of a mile or so on the Appalachian Trail, and got to the Boulevard Trail. A little ways up the Boulevard Trail, there was a little offshoot of that trail to go look at the jump-off point. You go out about 0.3 miles, and then we could cut back about 1/10 of a mile and take the Boulevard Trail, and that would take us all the way up to Mount LeConte. And Mount LeConte would be the second place we would stay the night.
As we got closer to the jump-off, our view became more and more consumed by the thick fog, making the ledge even more dangerous.
You're standing on a rock that's really jutting out over nothing.
Watch your step, because there's just nothingness down there.
The hike was fairly strenuous, a lot of up and down.
Along the way, we had found some places where people had made artwork out of the rocks. In one of the locations, they had made a pyramid out of stones. It was pretty cool. But along the way, I think The natural formations were always the most impressive, and I loved seeing light come through the trees. We met several hikers along the way. This is Brady. He got up pretty early to start his hike.
Started out at 6:52 this morning, I think.
The ledge became steeper with every step as we got closer to the top. And just before we got to the lodge, we went to Myrtle Point and saw an amazing view. Next stop was Mount LeConte. At one point, we came to a crossroads, and we had to make a decision. This was probably the only time we almost got lost. Along the path, we stumbled upon another shelter, but this time there was nobody to be found. We continued just around the corner, and that's when we found it.
We got to the lodge, and the lodge was nice. Now, Mount LeConte Lodge is a place where it is almost impossible to get a reservation. It's like winning the lottery. Well, it was a rustic lodge. There wasn't any real electricity up there, but the cabins were nice, they were dry.
Well, welcome to our cabin.
Once inside, there were 3 bedrooms, and we had a fireplace, and just outside was a large deck.
This.
Feel good?
Yeah, feels good to sit down.
They had bunk beds. Each bunk was a queen-size bed. Each of the rooms had a propane heater, which you could operate, and it had a kerosene lantern. They also had nice clean water that you didn't have to purify with your tablets. It was drinkable.
Speaking of refreshments, the dining hall was a pretty popular place.
The nice thing about the dining hall is most of the day you could go down there and get hot chocolate or coffee.
We got 2 meals while we were there. We arrived in time for dinner, and we had breakfast the next morning. Shortly after eating, we explored the village. Once inside the office, after people checked in, hikers could sit down by the fire, they could play cards, even pick up a good book. And surprisingly, on the back deck, we were able to get a brief cell signal.
I'm checking to see if I have any messages coming in. I got a message from Joanna.
There were some old cabins there, some newer, and an overall upgraded look from when my parents came here over 30 years ago. In the morning, we woke up to hot coffee. Breakfast was perfect. Everything from eggs, waffles, grits. We made friends with the people at our table too. In particular, Wes and Robbie, our cabin mates. They got to see how our food got up the mountain. Llamas hiked it to us. Since the only way to get to the lodge is by hiking, these llamas are extremely important.
After breakfast and after packing our things, we headed off to go down the Alum Cave Bluff Trail. And then from there all the way down to the trailhead was about 5 miles. But that was a very steep trail. It was graded a 5 out of a 5 difficulty. They had cables strung, anchored to the rocks beside you so that you could hold on to the cable and not fall off the side of the mountain.
And the side of the mountain was just one bad step away. Dangerous, but beautiful.
We eventually got down to the Alum Cave Bluff area, which is about halfway down the trail. And that's a big overhanging rock. Great place if it was raining to keep out of the rain. And we took a bunch of pictures. A couple of tenths of a mile below that, you had a great view. You could see in just about every direction. Right before it started leveling out, we actually went through a hole in the mountain and had to take some steps that were real steep.
The staircase was awesome. It reminded me of something out of Lord of the Rings. It's very similar to Gollum's cave, and it was one of my favorite parts of the hike.
It went down through this hole, and when we got down out of the hole, that's where it started to level out, and they actually have bridges that were across creeks.
I tried out my underwater camera in one of the creeks. The water was pretty cold. This was a different sight that we hadn't seen, and it went on for miles.
Oh, got blueberries here. Pretty neat, huh? They are really blue, but they're not blueberries. They're just blue berries.
Being able to just spend a lot of time, some of it without even talking, having time to think is really good. A lot of the time though, as we'll go along the trail, we'll just talk or hum some songs, or we actually did some singing. Heavenly sunlight, flooding my soul with glory divine.
Being so far away from a daily routine gives a fresh perspective. Makes it easier to appreciate things that normally get looked over.
Another thing that was I was really thankful for is just to spend some time with my son David. You talk about all kinds of things that you normally don't think about, and you think about what life's about, the things that matter, you know, that God has made us, and He's taught us what things are important. So it's nice, especially if He's just like David and me. That time made us, I think, feel closer to each other, and it is a good memory that we'll always have, and never let it go.